Fujifilm will launch a new camera. And there are some speculations regarding the sensor. Well, I want to touch on this and share with you what is my guess and why Fujifilm will launch a new full-frame camera. And I want to tell you what is my guess and why I do think it's a full-frame camera. So let's talk about this now. Hi there, Tudor Matescu here. There is a rumor that Fujifilm will launch a new Fujifilm camera with a sensor that wasn't used on any other Fujifilm camera X or GFX. So the first rumor, it is that Fujifilm will launch a successor, again a successor, of an X or of an GFX camera. Let's take it simple. GFX was recently launched and it's a big sensor camera, not as a phase 1, but it doesn't have any sense to launch a successor to a GFX camera. A toy camera with a smaller sensor, like 1-inch sensor, like a micro four sensor, it doesn't have sense. They already have some toy cameras and they will make some other cameras for the beginners, so it's not a successor. So what remains in the end? An APS-H camera? Why do this? It doesn't have sense. No sense at all. So the only camera that it's logic to launch, it will be a full frame camera. Again, my guess, I don't know their data, but I know the feedback that I get from Fujifilm shooters. And the feedback is like this. Lots of Fujifilm shooters, and especially professional and semi-professionals that used X-T5, X-H2 and X-H2S sold their Fujifilm cameras and went to Nikon ZF, a full-frame camera, retro-looking, with fast AF, with all the dials and all the whistles that Nikon has, with picture control, but with a flip screen and with a size to it. But those users were okay and are okay with a bigger and heavier camera. Personally, I am not, because that camera, for me, it has something that I really don't want to hear for street photography, and that it's a flip screen. And this is why I didn't go to the Nikon ZF system. And I decided to buy Fujifilm X-T50. So yes, for me that I want a flip screen and the Fujifilm colors and the Fujifilm lenses that are small and what Fujifilm has to offer, for me X-T50 it is great. I don't need a big full frame camera without a tilt screen. But if Nikon ZF had a tilt screen, for sure I would have go to that camera. And of course I would not sell for the moment my Fujifilm system. So why Fujifilm will go with a full frame sensor and what kind of sensor it will be? It will be an X-trans sensor or a bare sensor? Well, let's look at the GFX system. What sensor Fujifilm is using at the GFX system? Fujifilm is using the bare sensor, not the X-trans sensor. From my experience, the X-trans sensor is not as sharp as a bare sensor. I also have Sony a6400 that has an APS-C bare sensor. And the images from Sony a6400 are very sharp. They almost look like the images from Sony 7C. They are very, very sharp. You could use a Sony APS-C camera without problems if you want a small camera with sharp details. So the images aren't sharp because of the Sony AF. Yes, also the Sony AF is helping, but because of the bare sensor. I also had XF10, a bare sensor camera from Fujifilm. Great colors, great details, the lens and sensor, wow. So, mind-blowing image quality from the bare sensor with a normal lens. I'm not a fan of the X-trans sensor, and I never was. The only advantage that an X-trans sensor can offer to you, yes, is that the images are looking more organically. They have some colors to it, and probably you can get that colors with the X-trans sensor, and they look organically. But that organic look comes with a compromise, and that compromise is image quality. They look organic because they lose clarity and they lose that digital sharpness. But in the end, it depends what you want. Do you want sharpness and detail? Then don't use an X-trans sensor. Yes, with some of the Fujifilm lenses, I could say I'm not feeling the X-trans sensor. But those lenses are very few on my list. There is just one if I'm thinking well. That one lens is the 30mm f2.8 macro lens. and some macro lenses from Fujifilm also. But yes, with the macro lenses I feel that I'm not losing sharpness and details, but with normal lenses like 27mm f2.8, like 35mm f2, at pixel level, the images aren't looking fine at all, even with the 26-24 megapixel sensor from Fujifilm. But when I'm using a Fujifilm camera with the Bayer sensor, XF10, wow! Great details, great dynamic range, great sharpness, great colors, and also the image is looking organically because of the Fujifilm color science and because of their JPEG engine. But also I would add something, a test that you can make yourself with your Fujifilm camera. Take the Fujifilm camera, put sharpness to +5 and look at 300% and you will see those little worms that lots of users are accusing that they are seeing those worms when they are editing the raw file in the Lightroom catalog. So it's not the Lightroom fault, it's the extents from my point of view. It seems that that extent sensor is very hard to be translated into a nice looking file at pixel level, but also when you are looking at an image entirely, because you are losing details. This it's happening in the end with the majority of the lenses. My Sony a6400, again, APS-C sensor, it's much sharper with any lens than Fujifilm. Now there is another reason why Fujifilm may go to the full frame route, and that reason is represented by the lenses. Look here, an APS-C Fujifilm lens equivalent to 28mm, and this is a 28mm f2 lens. I've compared these lenses in one of my videos, and unfortunately this big 80mm f1.4 is losing a lot in the front of the small 28mm f2 Sony lens. Yes, maybe this lens is not one of the greatest 28mm full frame lens, but in the end result, it is sharper, it is better focused, the subject to background separation, it is better, I get more details, it is lighter, the price is more lower than the 18mm f1.4. So it seems, and Fujifilm proved, that it's not capable of releasing small APS-C capable lenses that have a decent price on the APS-C sensor. And why I'm saying that? Let's think that Fujifilm wanted to release the 33mm f1.0. They weren't able to do this because the lens was very big, very chunky and very expensive. So in the end, what they've did? They've released another big chunky lens, but not as chunky as the 33mm f1.0, the 50mm f1.0. Does it have sense? I can guess some young. 75mm f1.8 lens that is small and light, or other lenses, and I will blow in the wind the 50mm f1.0 from Fujifilm. So for Fujifilm doesn't make sense, and also for professional photographers doesn't make sense to invest in a big APS-C system with an extra sensor without the AF of a full frame camera. I don't know what Fujifilm will do with the AF of their full frame camera, but it doesn't have sense. And also Olympus proved this. They wanted to make lenses to compete with their brothers or sisters on the full frame system, and they've released the 70mm f1.2 and other lenses for the Micro Four Thirds system. Well, it seems that a smaller sensor requires more glass, more engineering, and expensive big heavy lenses. It doesn't have sense for the company and also for the photographers. Who wants to carry a big chunky lens that will not even compete with a small full frame lens f2? Who wants to do this? Who wants to pay 4x the money for an APS-C lens when you can pay 4x less for a full frame lens? And let's say you want to pay 4x the money for a pro lens. Why not go to a pro full frame lens that will cost you the same amount of money? And you could say, no, I want a smaller package. I'm sorry, professional photographers don't want smaller packages. A big camera with a big lens, it's influencing in a good way the client. When the client is looking at the camera and at the lens and they see a big equipment, they will say, wow, for sure the picture will look great. Even if the picture will also look great with a small Fujifilm X-T50 camera with 35mm f1.4. But a big chunky camera with a big quality lens for sure will impress the client, and also it will help the professional photographer. So in conclusion, I think this is the direction that Fujifilm will go, and I bet on it. Lumix did the same. Lumix, when they've launched their full-frame camera from Micro Four Thirds, remember this, they've launched a big camera, Lumix S1, S1H, and so on. So big chunky cameras with big chunky lenses for professionals. And they've did this years after years till they've released the beautiful, extraordinary, in quotes, Lumix S9. So it took them 3-4 years to launch professional equipment for full frame, S5, S5X, and so on. And after that, Lumix S9, that it's a joke of a photography camera. It may be okay for vlogging, but for photography, no way, because it has a sensor that will make bending and flickering by night if you shoot it over 1/60 of a second. So Fujifilm will launch probably a full-frame camera, but for professionals. So it will not be a Fujifilm X100 full-frame camera. Why should they do this? They already sell like pancakes X106. Why should they complicate their lives? No, they need a professional that went from the APS-C professional system to the full-frame system. Because, let me address something else. Who buys a GFX to do weddings? Even their ambassadors didn't do this. Even their ambassadors didn't decide to go exclusively on GFX to shoot weddings. So this is why my bet is that Fujifilm will go to the full frame market and will launch full frame cameras and full frame professional lenses and cameras for the moment. And after that, probably they will launch a small camera for a second body or for hobby photographers or for street photographers. Because there is the market at the professionals, because the hobby market, the street photography market, it is eaten by the phone photography. And yes, we have Leica QC43 and other niched cameras, but they are niched cameras. They take something from that market, but in numbers, the cameras that they are selling, it's very low compared to, let's say, full frame cameras that are sold for professional use like Sony a7 IV, Sony a7 III, Sony a7C, and so on. And if you are curious about Fujifilm versus Sony, I've already did some videos and some comparison, and you can check them out. Because look here, Sony a7C, aperture click Sigma lens, beautiful rendering, beautiful colors, metal build, construction build, beautiful. So why not do a full frame camera? It was finally the time Fujifilm to do a full frame camera. So let's see and let's wait what Fujifilm will bring to the table. Please tell me your thoughts, leave me your comments, subscribe to my channel, subscribe to my newsletter for more photography tips and tricks, and check my next videos. Thank you, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye bye.